You're standing outside your cave. It's 80,000 years ago. The fire went out an hour ago, and no one has the strength to restart it. Everyone around you is asleep. And it's dark. Not the kind of dark you know, not a bedroom with the curtains closed, not a hallway at 2 a.m. where you can still feel the shape of the walls. This is a different category of darkness entirely. The kind where you hold your hand 6 inches from your face and see nothing. The kind where the world just stops existing past your fingertips. You can hear things, though. Something large moved through the undergrowth 30 meters to your left. Maybe 20 seconds ago, you haven't heard it since. That's actually worse. A predator that stops moving isn't leaving. A predator that stops moving is positioning itself. Your heart rate has doubled. Your pupils are straining open as far as biology allows. Every hair on your body is standing straight up. And somewhere in the base of your skull, something old and very serious is repeating the same 2 words. Don't move. Here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. That feeling you get when a room goes suddenly dark, the unease when you wake up at 3 a.m. in a strange place, the instinct to scan the shadows before you cross an empty parking lot at night, the reason you sometimes still sleep with a light on, even though you know completely, rationally, that nothing is out there. That's not a quirk, that's not weakness. That is an 80,000-year-old survival program, still running, perfectly intact, inside your skull, right now, and it was built by exactly the kind of night I just described. The reason it still fires, the reason it still keeps you slightly, permanently on edge in the dark, that's what this is actually about. Let's go back, not 80,000 years, further. Because here's the strange part. The fear of darkness didn't begin with us. By the time Homo sapiens appeared on this planet, the fear of the dark was already ancient, already millions of years old, already so deeply layered into the primate brain that it had become something close to structural. Think about what your body does when a room goes dark unexpectedly. You don't decide to go on alert. You're already there. That's not a decision. That's a reflex. And reflexes that old don't appear overnight. They accumulate across millions of years of very specific, very lethal pressure. Here's what that pressure looked like. For the vast majority of primate evolution, the most dangerous thing a small, slow, defenseless, tree-dwelling primate could do was be caught in the open after sunset. During the day, you had vision. You could spot a leopard against the canopy 60 meters away. You could read the posture of a rival, track movement, assess distance, make decisions. At night, all of that disappeared. Picture it for a moment. You're standing in an open landscape. No walls, no door, no lock. The sun just dropped below the horizon, and the entire operating system your survival depends on just went offline. You are the same person you were 60 seconds ago. Same muscles, same reflexes, same intelligence, but now you can't see, and something out there can. And the predators, they'd been refining their night hunting systems for far longer than we'd existed. Cats evolved tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that doubles usable light. That's what makes their eyes glow when a flashlight catches them in the dark. Hyenas developed hearing so acute they can detect a kill being made 2 miles away. Owls evolved facial discs that funnel sound to asymmetrically placed ears, letting them triangulate the exact position of a mouse under 6 inches of snow, in total darkness, without seeing it at all. The African night wasn't quiet, it wasn't empty, it was the shift change. The day hunters rested, and everything that had been waiting in the shadows came alive. Your brain remembers this, not as a memory, as architecture. Now I need to tell you something about your own eyes, something most people never fully sit with, because this is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Your night vision is embarrassingly bad. Not slightly limited, not below average, embarrassingly, almost comically bad compared to what was sharing the landscape with your ancestors. Humans are built, from the retina outward, for daylight. Your eyes contain 2 types of light-sensitive cells, cones for color and detail in bright conditions, and rods for low light. But here's the part nobody tells you. In genuine darkness, your rods create a blind spot directly in the center of your visual field, right in the middle, meaning that in real darkness, you actually see more clearly by looking slightly to the side of whatever you're trying to find. Your eyes have a dead zone aimed at the exact place you'd look if something was coming toward you. A domestic cat has 6 to 8 times more rod cells per square millimeter than you do. A barn owl can function in light 100 times dimmer than what you need to see anything at all. Try this the next time you're in a genuinely dark room, not dim, not moonlit, actually dark. Hold your hand in front of your face. You'll probably see nothing. That's not a malfunction. That's just what human eyes are. Your ancestors lived their entire lives with that limitation, in a landscape full of animals that didn't share it, animals that could track them, locate them, close a distance, perfectly, silently, while they stood there seeing nothing. And there's something else about that landscape that never gets mentioned, something that makes the whole situation feel even more asymmetric than it already sounds. The predators weren't just better equipped for the dark. They had been hunting in it for millions of years before we arrived. The African leopard, for example, is a creature so precisely engineered for nighttime ambush that it can reduce its own sound signature to essentially nothing. Padded paws, retractable claws that never touch the ground when they don't need to, a body that moves through long grass without disturbing a single blade. Researchers studying leopard predation have documented approaches so quiet, so controlled, that prey animals standing less than 10 meters away showed no awareness until contact was made. Your ancestor had no way of knowing whether the silence meant nothing was there, or whether it meant something was 10 meters away and closing. In complete darkness, those two situations feel identical. And here's what changed everything about how the brain responded to that problem. When your visual input drops, when the eyes stop sending reliable information, the brain doesn't relax. It accelerates, hearing sharpens, the startle reflex goes hair trigger. The amygdala, your brain's threat processing center, shifts to elevated alert and starts pattern matching every incoming sound, every sensation, against every threat template it has ever recorded. Here's the part that surprises people. It doesn't wait for confirmation before it fires. The brain doesn't say, insufficient data, no conclusion available. That's how a logic system works. The brain is not a logic system. It's a survival system, so it fills the gaps by assuming the worst-case scenario is true until proven otherwise. Not because the worst case is likely, because the cost of assuming danger when nothing was there is a racing heart and a sleepless hour. The cost of assuming nothing was there when something was. You don't get to pass that mistake to your children. Think about the last time you heard something in the dark and felt your whole body tighten before your brain even had time to process the sound. That reaction you couldn't stop, couldn't choose. That's exactly this. Your amygdala moved before your prefrontal cortex had the information. That's not anxiety. That's ancient hardware executing perfectly. Across 80,000 generations of human ancestry, the brains that defaulted to danger in the dark with incomplete information produced more surviving children than the brains that defaulted to calm. That one sentence explains almost everything about why you still feel what you feel at night. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The danger wasn't just about what was out there. It was about what darkness did to the people around you. Humans don't survive alone. We never have. For the entire span of our evolutionary history, survival was collective. Your group was your food, your defense, your early warning system. The moment you were separated from them, your odds dropped off a cliff. And darkness dissolved all of that. It didn't just blind individuals. It shattered the group's ability to function as a unit. You couldn't read faces. You couldn't track positions. You couldn't signal with your hands. Every form of coordination your species ran on, continuous, visual, high bandwidth, went offline with the sun. Imagine losing your entire group in an instant, not because anything happened to them, just because the light changed. That's what every night was. What's remarkable is that humans actually adapted their sleeping behavior around this problem in ways that most people have never considered. Small bands of early humans didn't all sleep at the same time. They couldn't afford to. Field studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Kungsan of the Kalahari, reveal a pattern that researchers believe mirrors deep ancestral behavior. At any given time through the night, someone is awake. Not by formal rotation, not by assigned watch duty, just naturally, Different people cycling in and out of light sleep, alert sleep, deep sleep, at staggered intervals. The group, as a collective organism, almost never goes fully offline. You've probably experienced a version of this without realizing it. That strange feeling of waking at 3 a.m. for no clear reason, lying there alert, listening, for 10 or 15 minutes, and then drifting back. Researchers who study sleep architecture believe this may be a remnant of exactly that ancient pattern, the group's distributed vigilance, still running on a schedule calibrated for a world that no longer exists around you. And here's where scientists were genuinely surprised. Predators didn't just happen to be active at night. They had evolved around this specific vulnerability. African lions are measurably more likely to attack during new moon phases when ambient light is at its lowest than at any other point in the lunar cycle. Multiple studies, decades of field data, the effect is not subtle. The lions aren't calculating. But the behaviors that succeeded during low-light windows got reinforced across generations, until their peak activity aligned almost precisely with the window of maximum human blindness. Your ancestors were not imagining threats in the dark. The dark was genuinely, measurably, documentably more dangerous. And the bodies that survived it were the ones that treated it that way. But something unexpected happened, something that would change the entire relationship between humans and the night. Fire. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire by human ancestors dates to roughly 1 million years ago at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. But the habitual, through-the-night use of fire as a permanent feature of human settlement, solidifies somewhere between 400,000 and 300,000 years ago. And what fire did to the darkness was not simply illuminate it. It redrew the boundary. Before fire, the night belonged to the predators, entirely unconditionally. Then fire created a circle, warm, bright, flickering, and almost every large carnivore that shared the ancient savanna with early humans had an instinctive aversion to it, a refusal to cross into the light, so consistent it functioned like a wall that nothing could see, but nothing would cross. Inside that circle you could see faces again, coordinate, communicate, spot the reflected glow of eyes approaching from the darkness long before those eyes reached you. You've probably felt a version of this. The way a campfire at night makes everything outside the ring of light feel a little more threatening. The way you instinctively keep your back to the flame and face outward. You do that, think about it, everyone does. That's not aesthetics. That's 300,000 years of your body knowing exactly where the safe zone ends. But here's what most people never realize about those firelit evenings. Something started happening around the fire that had nothing to do with survival. Between 70,000 and 40,000 years ago, the archaeological record begins filling up with things that were never there before. Not just better tools, ochre pigments used for body decoration, shell beads strung as jewelry, ritualistic burials with personal grave goods, musical instruments carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory, and symbolic art, paintings that required someone to crawl deep into a cave with a torch, lie down on cold stone in total silence, and spend hours painting animals on a wall that almost no one would ever see. Someone did that, not for survival, for something else entirely. And this is where scientists were completely surprised. The leading hypothesis about why all of this appeared when it did centers not on better tools or bigger brains, but on those quiet hours by the fire, on the extended, protected, low-threat evenings that fire made possible for the first time. Hours in which language could become story, story could become myth, myth could become the shared architecture of an entire group's identity. Think about what those evenings actually looked like. The group gathered close, children asleep near the center where it was warmest, adults arranged in a loose ring facing outward, watching the darkness beyond the light, the fire popping and settling, someone talking, someone else listening. The same voices you heard every day of your life, but in the dark they carried differently, more weight, more texture. You couldn't read their faces fully, so you listened more carefully to the words. Researchers who study oral tradition and the evolution of language have argued that this specific environment, intimate, dark at the edges, emotionally heightened by the presence of unseen threat just beyond the firelight, may have been the incubator for human narrative, for the kind of storytelling that passes knowledge across generations. The cautionary tale, the origin story, the explanation of why the world is the way it is. We became who we are in the dark, at the edge of the firelight, with predators circling just beyond where the light died, and something completely new building in the space between. The fear of the dark created the conditions that produced human civilization. Sit with that for a moment. Now here's something that, once you see it clearly, you can't unsee. Why do children fear the dark? Not some children, all children, across every culture ever studied, before they've seen a horror film, before anyone told them they should be scared. From the moment the lights go out, something activates. Every parent knows the sound, the small voice, the sudden need for the door to stay open just a little. Here's what's actually happening. A 2-year-old human is, in terms of self-protection, essentially equivalent to our earliest ancestors. Small, slow, unable to defend themselves, completely dependent on the group for survival. The threat detection that fires in the dark isn't malfunctioning in a child. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to, for a body with exactly that level of vulnerability. The child asking for the light on isn't being irrational. Their brain is running an 80,000-year-old program. It's not wrong. It's running on hardware that still carries the original settings before years of living in safe rooms and well-lit streets have partially smoothed the signal down. And here's what actually surprised the researchers when they looked into this more carefully. Adults never fully lose it either. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Adult fear of the dark is one of the most underreported phenomena in all of psychology because we're not supposed to admit to it. So instead we call it a preference. We leave the hallway light on and say it's just easier. We check the room before bed and call it a habit. We don't say what it actually is, which is a threat detection system producing a real signal that we've learned to suppress socially, but never actually switched off. Psychophysiological studies, the ones that measure what the body actually does instead of what people say they feel, tell a consistent story. When adult humans are placed in genuine darkness, even in completely safe laboratory environments, heart rate elevates, cortisol rises, the startle reflex sharpens. These aren't decisions. These are automatic outputs of a system responding to the exact sensory condition it was built for. The darkness is the trigger. The brain doesn't need a monster, it just needs the dark. Think about the last time you woke up at 3 a.m. in a strange place and couldn't immediately remember where you were. That spike. That half-second where your body went completely, silently online before your brain had the information. That gap between the ancient system activating and the rational one catching up. That's the seam, right there. That's where you can actually feel it happening. Your conscious mind knows you are safe. It knows the room is empty. The sound was the building settling. It has processed all available evidence and arrived at one conclusion: nothing is wrong. Your amygdala received none of that memo. It detected degraded visual input. It sent the alert, and it will keep sending the alert because genuine darkness provides no visual confirmation that the threat is absent. Absence of information is not the same as information about absence. The brain knows the difference. The ancient part doesn't care. This is the experience of lying awake in the dark knowing there's nothing wrong and being completely unable to convince your body of that fact. That feeling isn't a disorder. It's a perfectly calibrated output of a system built for a world where 3 a.m. in the dark was the single most dangerous moment of any given day. Here's the last piece, the one I keep returning to. In 2009, researchers at the University of Toronto discovered something unexpected. Darkness didn't just activate fear. It changed the way people made moral judgments. Participants in dimly lit rooms consistently judged identical scenarios as more threatening, more suspicious, more dangerous than participants in bright rooms. Not because they were more afraid, because the generalized threat state that darkness activates doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It shifts the entire lens through which you process everything around you. In the dark trust contracts, strangers look more dangerous, risks look larger, the world shrinks inward. You felt this, the way a perfectly ordinary street looks different at 11 p.m. than it does at noon. Same street, same buildings, same people, probably different sky, and yet something in you adjusts, recalibrates, tightens almost imperceptibly. That's not paranoia. That's your nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, matching its threat calibration to the sensory environment. And the sensory environment says, dark. In every piece of data your nervous system has ever been trained on, dark means one thing. Be careful. There's one more thing worth understanding before we close this out, and it's the part that I think genuinely reframes everything we've covered. The fear of darkness is not evenly distributed across your life. It rises and falls with something very specific, how vulnerable you feel. Studies on nyctophobia, clinical fear of darkness, consistently show that it spikes during periods of transition, uncertainty, grief, illness, times when the sense of control contracts and the awareness of vulnerability expands. Children fear the dark most intensely between ages 4 and 6, precisely the window when they've become aware enough to understand that danger exists, but haven't yet built the full cognitive architecture to manage that understanding. Adults who experience acute anxiety episodes or who are going through major life disruptions frequently report a return of the childhood fear of the dark they thought they'd outgrown. It never went away, it was just being managed. The moment your sense of safety weakens, the ancient program reasserts itself. Because the ancient program doesn't know the difference between a child in a dark cave 80,000 years ago and an adult in a dark bedroom feeling like their life is out of control. It reads one signal: visibility is low, the threat level is unknown, and it responds the only way it knows how. Stay alert, pay attention, don't assume you're safe just because nothing has happened yet. That instinct has an age on it. It's not yours. You inherited it from a chain of people so long it disappears before history begins, each one of them having survived exactly this feeling in much higher stakes conditions than a dark bedroom and passed it forward. So the next time you feel it, that unconquerable, slightly embarrassing unease in the dark, I want you to sit with it differently this time. Notice it, really notice it. The way your hearing sharpens, the way your body orients toward the room without you deciding to do that, the way you scan the corners before you let yourself settle. You're not imagining things, you're not being irrational. You are running the same program that ran in a skull 80,000 years ago, outside a cave, at the edge of a dying fire, listening for the sound in the undergrowth that stopped moving. The threat is gone, the vigilance stayed. And buried in that vigilance, carried forward through every generation that felt it, and survived long enough to feel it again the next night, is the reason you're here at all. Every ancestor who was afraid of the dark and stayed alert because of it lived to pass that fear on. Everyone who decided the night was safe enough to stop paying attention got quietly removed from the story. You are the direct descendant of every human being who was afraid of the dark. That isn't a flaw. That is the proof that the design worked. See you in the next one.